People share their creepy stories. Redditor 31, that time I was a 13-year-old just walking a block away to buy candy at the dollar store in the middle of summer vacation. A odd-seeming adult man complimented me on my hand-me-down purple shorts and blue t-shirt. He wanted to touch my long hair and I told him no and ran out of the store without buying anything. 5 years later, during another summer after I had already turned 18 years old and after getting essayed by my ex, I was walking from the public library to my friend's house and a white car pulled out of a driveway a block behind me. The same guy yelled out a creepy "Hi beautiful girl, I remember you from the dollar store" at me. I was sweaty, feeling gross from the summer heat, and I had cut my hair really short so obviously I didn't look the same anymore. But he still continued to catcall me. I ran down the sidewalk and he literally turned his car to follow me all the way to my friend's house. My friend's boyfriend was there thankfully and got him to go away. Never saw him again. Redditor 32, when I was 8, woke early in the morning after a nightmare about my dad getting buried in the ground. Then I went to the bathroom where I saw my dad, who was abroad at the time, smiling at me in the mirror. I ran and got my sister, who also saw him, but by the time my mother and brother came he was gone. 6 hours later my mom got a call. He had died a few hours ago. It was nice getting to see my dad one last time. He seemed happy. Redditor 33, we were going to a Christmas party for work, being held at Uttered Rock Cafe in Surfers Paradise, Queensland. Whole bunch of us so rented limos that held about 20 people. After eating, most were going to do a pub crawl through the various venues, but hubby and I had our 3 kids with us. Boys 7 and 3, girl age 2. As the limos were only returning when a large group was ready to go back to the motel we were all staying in, we went to find a taxi. The queue was a mile long and hubby noticed there was a bus stop opposite. We only had to go maybe 5 stops, so lined up with about 10 other strangers. A man was walking past the line and he suddenly noticed us, and joined the line even though he had originally been passing by. He struck up a conversation, asking if we were locals. Hubby said we used to be but now lived at Noosa on the Sunshine Coast. He just kept questioning us and it freaked me out. He asked us what bus stop we were getting off at. My husband said stop 22, outside the ex-motel. I suddenly felt like I should lie, and said we won't miss seeing it because all the others from work are waiting there at the bus stop, aren't they, dear? Hubby caught on and agreed. The guy grumbled, got off at the next stop, ran across the highway and got on a bus going in the opposite direction. What do you think his plan was? He was alone. We were 2 adults but we did have the 3 kids. It has always creeped me out, what he was up to. Redditor 34, there was a man that was not a good person and he was manipulating people in an attempt to get rich in very unethical ways. My wife and I were disconnecting ourselves from the whole scene, and I prayed that God would stop the man from taking advantage of people. Less than 6 months later, he died during a routine surgery. Redditor 35, I have a love-hate relationship with the full-body mirror my stepmother owns. Lately there has been some interesting paranormal activity revolving that mirror. How it started, but I have a little story. If I was hallucinating, but it kinda creeped me out. So I was hanging out with my stepmom the other day. She has given me some clothes and all to try, so I did. After a while she left me alone to do something and I went over to the mirror and looked at my reflection, seeing if the outfit suited me or not, and I swear, I really do. I suddenly saw my reflection give this loopy smile and it caught me off guard because I didn't do anything or did any goody faces to the mirror. It gave me the chills and I bolted out of there. Don't put too much mind to it, but that mirror is now covered due to other wacky stuff occurring. Lol. Redditor 36, I was watching TV late at night when I felt a tingle go up my spine. It vanished as it got up to my neck and I was about to forget about it when it suddenly emerged again, going down my face. Only then did I realize it was a big-ass spider. Redditor 37, I was staying over my grandparents with a cousin to keep them company. My cousin and I shared the guest bed and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I started being woken up out of a sound sleep to strange whispers just outside the door. I sat up and paid attention as I didn't know if it was my grandma or something. The whispers got a bit louder and then I realized they were saying my name. I got chills all over my back and I knew I was the only one awake at that moment. I was younger, so I still believed the blanket was my supernatural shield. The whispers went on a few times more and then stopped. Couldn't fall asleep until my body just gave up and I drifted back to sleep. Fast forward to a couple of weeks later to a celebration my whole family was doing in my grandparents' house. They have a terrace and my mom was there just helping setting things up. I didn't mention what had happened to me to anyone but my cousin. A few hours later I came to my grandparents and my mom came to me with a bit of a confused and fearful look on her face. She said that when she went to the terrace to help setting stuff up, something came close to her ear and whispered my name a couple of times. I just stared at her in disbelief. I then told her of my occurrence with those whispers a couple of weeks prior. To this day I have no idea what that was. Redditor 38, when I was 7 or 8. I couldn't sleep without my long pillow. I usually hug my long pillow, so it's become a habit. I woke up at midnight 3 a.m., trying to find my long pillow, but I didn't find it. Half awake young me opened my eyes and found something, or someone, a lady. Long black hair and white dress sleep next to me, not facing me. I thought, oh, probably mom, and hug her, then fell asleep. My last thought was, wait. Mom has short hair. Redditor 39, in Las Vegas on family vacation, we were going to the steakhouse at the top 24th floor of Binion's downtown. They have a glass elevator that faces the street and my Sil is deathly afraid of elevators, so I agreed to take the hotel elevator inside with her instead. They were undergoing a huge reno at the time, so the hotel was closed. We go in the elevator and hit the button for the restaurant, and we're chatting on the way up to keep her mind off the elevator. So when the door dings open I step off only to notice I'm in the hallway of the hotel. All the lights are off save the emergency lights and they're flickering pure horror movie style. Immediately the elevator door starts closing, but thankfully me Sil hasn't stepped off and pushed the door back open. This was like 10 p.m, there were no workers on site. No lights on. Absolutely no reason the elevator should have opened. We were so freaked out we ended up having security escort us down the stairs on the way back out. Redditor 40, field by my home. Kids said there were ghosts there. Me and some friends went to check it out. Saw some big white blur thing move around it. Ran away. Year or so later I am ranting about how ghosts don't exist and my friend reminds me of that incident. I agreed that something didn't add up. I go back to that field alone at night. I see the white blur. And I chase it. I have to know, I have to be right. Turns out it was a huge skunk. Don't tell that story often because people will think that there is something wrong with me. Redditor 41, nothing seemed creepy, until 2 weeks ago when it touched me. One night I came back and went to bed, but before I did I remember feeling this odd feeling like someone was watching me. I put it off thinking I was just tired. Fast forward to about 8 a.m. and I have this dream that I'm being chased by this ghostly looking woman and I was stuck in my bed. When I woke up I had a bloody nose. I put this off thinking it's one of those dreams. Next night I come home late and I go to bed, but when I'm sleeping I get woken up with this sense that I'm being watched again. When I woke up I was rolled away from my girlfriend, and decided to roll over to face her. When I did she was gone and I see a dark shadowy figure walking over to me that looked like my girlfriend. And she reached out to me. Or I thought, my girlfriend who just woke up next to me thirsty for water. Lifted her head up that was tucked under her pillow to get water. I flipped out, going from a sleepy state to fully awake and adrenaline coursing through me. Explaining to my girlfriend what just happened. Anyways, I ended up just getting up and starting my day a little earlier than normal. The night after I'm off home from work and go to bed early with my girlfriend. We are cuddling and fall asleep. I don't know what it was, but my toe was grabbed like in a way to pull up the sheet and my foot. I kicked and sprang up thinking someone was at the edge of my bed. My girlfriend who was watching TikToks on my chest also what happened because she was laying on top of me before I sprung up. The room was empty. We saged our apartment. This isn't the first time something like this has happened, but damn was it defiantly one of the craziest. Redditor 42, this is likely someone else's creepy story but here it goes. When I was in my early 20s, I'd go out drinking with friends and eventually get a little too tipsy. I'd get into my head and decide to walk home without telling anyone I was leaving. Not super smart, being a young woman walking home solo. but it was only a few blocks. One night I'm walking and notice a person behind me, about a block and a half away. Being tipsy, my imagination gets the best of me and I begin to believe they're following me. I manage to speed walk around a corner and impulsively jump into a bush to hide from this person. I wait in this bush for what felt like forever, shivering in the December New England cold, and at some point figure that I'd waited long enough and very suddenly stand straight up and out of the bush. Only to be greeted by a very bewildered girl, around my age, staring at me in shock. I did the only thing that made sense and said, "Hello." She quickly ran away. 1. Redditor 43, when I was a little kid, like maybe 5 or 6, I would frequently have these weird hallucinations whenever I sat on my mom's bed. I'd sit there and see all these transparent shapes and objects floating down all around me like I was in the middle of some trippy cylinder. I'd see raindrops, different shapes like triangles and squares, and even little tiny umbrellas and happy faces. It was the absolute weirdest thing, but as a tiny child I thought it was really fun and magical. I remember I would swipe my hand through the objects and be able to catch them in my hand, and when I opened my fist, they would be gone. This happened several times and only ever on my mom's bed. My parents never smoked or did drugs or anything, so I very much doubt it was anything I was inhaling or something. And after about 7, it never happened again. My mom also told me that as a baby I'd used to point at empty spots in the air and say bubble. Weird hallucinations, I guess. Redditor 44, not many creepy things happened to me. I already told this story one other time on Reddit, but here goes. In middle school, a kid tried repeatedly to befriend me, but I kept rejecting him cause he kept making inappropriate comments at me. Plus he was bullying my friend and trying to make it look like he was joking. Brief context, throughout middle and high school, we were required to wear IDs and lanyards. One thing he commonly did to her was wrap his lanyard around her neck and choke her with it, but made it look like he wasn't really choking her and just horsing around because he would do it in front of other students. But I saw through it cause she told me she was suffering. I think he did other things to do her, but I don't remember exactly what else. He kept trying to chat me up into high school, but I stopped seeing him around after freshman year. My friend kept being kinda briefed on his admittedly sad life and told me that something horrible happened to him and that's why we didn't see him anymore, but she didn't know what exactly happened to him and neither did I. Frankly, I didn't care, since he made me uncomfortable and angry. Ike, a clearly troubled kid with violent, deceitful tendencies and tendencies to make sexual cracks at girls, kept trying to befriend me. Creepy. Redditor 45, 1. My friend and I were walking to school same way we always walked and this van kept circling us. Middle school age for context. We noticed it again the next day rolling around, and when I saw the van the second time I immediately started sprinting and my friend just kind of stood there then ran after me. I told my friend we need to find a new route or something. Why I never told my parents I regret. So we started walking the other route and it was fine. I got picked up end of day though by my brother. She walked. Apparently the van came up on her and they tried to pull her in, but she was able to kinda like jump off the side and ran for her life. There's so many crazy what ifs though. Did they always plan it only being her? Or was it cause she was the only one there that day? Had I walked back with her, would I have been taken too? She also didn't walk out back the new route. She took the old one. I've always felt bad about it, but at least she got away. 2. I'm an atheist and have been for a long time. But I am not close-minded and do respect others' religion. It's just not for me. However, my ex-mother-in-law was deeply Catholic and would drag me to retreats and mass and all those things which I tolerated out of respect for my mother-in-law. Finally, at this retreat I couldn't contain myself. I just had to start laughing at how ridiculous this retreat was. It was in the woods. A little commune kind of thing. Real cult-like. And everyone was singing and there were all these hand-built mini churches. Wearing all these necklaces and shit. I mean, it was nuts. Also, this was in the deep south. Anyways, when I trying to hide my hysterical laughing and no shit biggest wind gusts ever happened, and all this shit started flying like crazy off the ground into the air. Ike, if that was kinda sign. Totally creepy though. I left. Redditor 46, When I was about 12-13 years old, I was walking along my street with my dad at around 7 p.m. at night. And we were just walking down the street when I see this white-coated child walking along the street perpendicular to ours. I remember rubbing my eyes a few times but still seeing them. I asked my dad if he saw them, but I don't think he ever gave me a clear answer. This next part is a bit hazy, but hear me out. I swear this child phased through the fence along the street that they were walking on, and into one of the houses. Either me rubbing my eyes covered them opening the fence and walking in, or I just remember it wrong, but I swear they phased through the fence. I got really freaked out and asked my dad again if he saw the boy, to which he responded, "Oh, he's probably just borrowing some sugar from the house next door, it's no biggie." And then I looked back and he was gone. I never saw that white-coated boy ever again. Redditor 47, I got shot like with a gun when I was out with some friends, and never told anyone, ever. Redditor 48, I think I was abducted by aliens. No one knows. I remember being surrounded by aliens and I was screaming for help. Scariest thoughts and feelings I've ever had. It gives me shivers just thinking about it. Redditor 49, the story of the hash-slinging slasher. Redditor 50, I used to drive a lot at night for a job. I'm not one to see strange stuff or get spooked from shadows, but while driving down a road one night, I saw a female figure standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on my brakes and kept seeing it in my rear view mirror, but when I got back to her and tried to see with my own eyes, not a mirror, nothing was there. Like I saw her head on, and after I passed was watching in my rear view mirror for a while. It's not even a matter of I'm not sure I saw what I saw, I know I saw a person. Redditor 51, it didn't happen to me, but somehow it has something to do with me. I used to work in an island, and I have to board a ferry to get there. One of my colleagues lived in that island, so there should be no way we could cross path because the jetty was at the south of the island, and her house was at the north. So imagined her surprise when she saw me, wearing the same attire I wore at the office that day, riding a motorbike and stopping at the traffic light not far from her home. She said it was really me, but she was at the right lane, she has to turn right at that traffic light, and I was at the left so she can clearly see my face. She called my name from the car, I totally ignored her. She honked me, and I didn't even bat an eye. The light turned green, I rode forward, and she had to turn, but the next day, she asked me where I was going. I was at home, I wasn't even at that island. But the fact that my colleague met my doppelganger is something I always think about till today. Redditor 52, my second submission for this one. So when I was younger, about 9 or 10 on our way to school at about 7 a.m., I remember always passing by this older man who sat by a church. Every day for I think maybe a year we would see him, but one day he wasn't sitting down. He was lying down against a nearby wall, his eyes looked lifeless and he looked pale. The wall he lied by was in the public eye, so I don't think he was dead? Maybe? Not sure. Later that day he was gone, we never passed by that man again. Kinda sad when I think about it, but not quite sure if we either A saw a dead body or B. He straight up left. Redditor 53, I was cooking dinner and only had the lights on in the kitchen and living room. My apartment is open concept with a long hallway to the front door. I walked to the trash can at the edge of the kitchen to toss out some scraps. I got a strange feeling and looked up toward my front door. I saw a dark male figure standing directly in front of my door. If you've ever seen Hereditary, it was exactly like the scene where the grandma is in the room with the lights off when Annie walks in. My heart dropped and fight mode turned on. With a knife in my hand, I flip on every single light in the apartment. No one was there. A couple months later, my property manager told me that someone overdosed and died across the hall around the same time that happened. Still gives me chills, but hasn't happened since. Redditor 54, I was tired and decided to take a nap. It was fairly late for a nap, but I wasn't working at the time and had nothing else better to do. It was almost dark but not quite to sleep. I went until something woke me up and I immediately realized I couldn't move or speak. Redditor 54, I was tired and decided to take a nap. It was fairly late for a nap, but I wasn't working at the time and had nothing else better to do. It was almost dark but not quite to sleep. I went until something woke me up and I immediately realized I couldn't move or speak. Redditor 54, I was tired and decided to take a nap. It was fairly late for a nap, but I wasn't working at the time and had nothing else better to do. It was almost dark but not quite to sleep. I went until something woke me up and I immediately realized I couldn't move or speak. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, talk, nothing. That's when I saw it, darting from one corner of my bedroom to the other. It was like a dark, evil mass of a shadow. I couldn't quite see any features. I could feel a dark, evil heaviness. Then it darted to the corners behind me where I could not see it at all. I was helpless and terrified. I began to try to yell out for my roommate to help me, but nothing came out. Then I saw it again and I probably would have shit myself if I wasn't paralyzed. It was no longer floating or darting in the corner. Redditor 54, I was tired and decided to take a nap. It was fairly late for a nap, but I wasn't working at the time and had nothing else better to do. It was almost dark but not quite to sleep. I went until something woke me up and I immediately realized I couldn't move or speak. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, talk, nothing. That's when I saw it, darting from one corner of my bedroom to the other. It was like a dark, evil mass of a shadow. I couldn't quite see any features. I could feel a dark, evil heaviness. Then it darted to the corners behind me where I could not see it at all. I was helpless and terrified. I began to try to yell out for my roommate to help me, but nothing came out. Then I saw it again and I probably would have shit myself if I wasn't paralyzed. It was no longer floating or darting in the corner. It was slowly raising up at the foot of my bed. Arms reached out, grabbed my feet, began slowly pulling itself up my body towards my head. I could kinda make out facial features, but not really, as it pulled itself closer, up to my knees, then to my waist. The terror and fear I was feeling was unimaginable. I don't know how I did it, probably the fear I was feeling, but I was able to scream out. Luckily my roommate was home and heard me. She opened my door and asked, "Are you okay?" I couldn't answer. It was dark and so she couldn't see that I was awake, eyes wide open, watching and hearing, but unable to do anything but wave my pinky to her, which she couldn't see either. By this point that thing was sitting on my chest, inches from my face. When she opened my door to see if I was okay, it slowly looked at her and then turned back and looked at me as if it was saying, "I'm not done with you. I'll be back," and it took off into the corner of my bedroom where I first saw it and disappeared. Once it was gone, I was free and able to move. To this day I remember it as if it was yesterday, and so does my roommate. That happened around 2007. At the time I thought I was the only one to experience this. I had never heard of this happening to anyone else. You can imagine my shock when years later, I'm at Target, looking at DVDs when I see a title that caught my eye. Redditor 54, I was tired and decided to take a nap. It was fairly late for a nap, but I wasn't working at the time and had nothing else better to do. It was almost dark but not quite to sleep. I went until something woke me up and I immediately realized I couldn't move or speak. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, talk, nothing. That's when I saw it, darting from one corner of my bedroom to the other. It was like a dark, evil mass of a shadow. I couldn't quite see any features. I could feel a dark, evil heaviness. Then it darted to the corners behind me where I could not see it at all. I was helpless and terrified. I began to try to yell out for my roommate to help me, but nothing came out. Then I saw it again and I probably would have shit myself if I wasn't paralyzed. It was no longer floating or darting in the corner. It was slowly raising up at the foot of my bed. Arms reached out, grabbed my feet, began slowly pulling itself up my body towards my head. I could kinda make out facial features, but not really, as it pulled itself closer, up to my knees, then to my waist. The terror and fear I was feeling was unimaginable. I don't know how I did it, probably the fear I was feeling, but I was able to scream out. Luckily my roommate was home and heard me. She opened my door and asked, "Are you okay?" I couldn't answer. It was dark and so she couldn't see that I was awake, eyes wide open, watching and hearing, but unable to do anything but wave my pinky to her, which she couldn't see either. By this point that thing was sitting on my chest, inches from my face. When she opened my door to see if I was okay, it slowly looked at her and then turned back and looked at me as if it was saying, "I'm not done with you. I'll be back," and it took off into the corner of my bedroom where I first saw it and disappeared. Once it was gone, I was free and able to move. To this day I remember it as if it was yesterday, and so does my roommate. That happened around 2007. At the time I thought I was the only one to experience this. I had never heard of this happening to anyone else. You can imagine my shock when years later, I'm at Target, looking at DVDs when I see a title that caught my eye. Redditor54, I was tired and decided to take a nap. It was fairly late for a nap, but I wasn't working at the time and had nothing else better to do. It was almost dark but not quite to sleep. I went until something woke me up and I immediately realized I couldn't move or speak. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, talk, nothing. That's when I saw it, darting from one corner of my bedroom to the other. It was like a dark, evil mass of a shadow. I couldn't quite see any features. I could feel a dark, evil heaviness. Then it darted to the corners behind me where I could not see it at all. I was helpless and terrified. I began to try to yell out for my roommate to help me, but nothing came out. Then I saw it again and I probably would have shit myself if I wasn't paralyzed. It was no longer floating or darting in the corner. It was slowly raising up at the foot of my bed. Arms reached out, grabbed my feet, began slowly pulling itself up my body towards my head. I could kinda make out facial features, but not really, as it pulled itself closer, up to my knees, then to my waist. The terror and fear I was feeling was unimaginable. I don't know how I did it, probably the fear I was feeling, but I was able to scream out. Luckily my roommate was home and heard me. She opened my door and asked, "Are you okay?" I couldn't answer. It was dark and so she couldn't see that I was awake, eyes wide open, watching and hearing, but unable to do anything but wave my pinky to her, which she couldn't see either. By this point that thing was sitting on my chest, inches from my face. When she opened my door to see if I was okay, it slowly looked at her and then turned back and looked at me as if it was saying, "I'm not done with you. I'll be back," and it took off into the corner of my bedroom where I first saw it and disappeared. Once it was gone, I was free and able to move. To this day I remember it as if it was yesterday, and so does my roommate. That happened around 2007. At the time I thought I was the only one to experience this. I had never heard of this happening to anyone else. You can imagine my shock when years later, I'm at Target, looking at DVDs when I see a title that caught my eye, Shadow People, and my heart sank when the description of the film sounded exactly like my experience. Redditor54, I was tired and decided to take a nap. It was fairly late for a nap, but I wasn't working at the time and had nothing else better to do. It was almost dark but not quite to sleep. I went until something woke me up and I immediately realized I couldn't move or speak. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, talk, nothing. That's when I saw it, darting from one corner of my bedroom to the other. It was like a dark, evil mass of a shadow. I couldn't quite see any features. I could feel a dark, evil heaviness. Then it darted to the corners behind me where I could not see it at all. I was helpless and terrified. I began to try to yell out for my roommate to help me, but nothing came out. Then I saw it again and I probably would have shit myself if I wasn't paralyzed. It was no longer floating or darting in the corner. It was slowly raising up at the foot of my bed. Arms reached out, grabbed my feet, began slowly pulling itself up my body towards my head. I could kinda make out facial features, but not really, as it pulled itself closer, up to my knees, then to my waist. The terror and fear I was feeling was unimaginable. I don't know how I did it, probably the fear I was feeling, but I was able to scream out. Luckily my roommate was home and heard me. She opened my door and asked, "Are you okay?" I couldn't answer. It was dark and so she couldn't see that I was awake, eyes wide open, watching and hearing, but unable to do anything but wave my pinky to her, which she couldn't see either. By this point that thing was sitting on my chest, inches from my face. When she opened my door to see if I was okay, it slowly looked at her and then turned back and looked at me as if it was saying, "I'm not done with you. I'll be back," and it took off into the corner of my bedroom where I first saw it and disappeared. Once it was gone, I was free and able to move. To this day I remember it as if it was yesterday, and so does my roommate. That happened around 2007. At the time I thought I was the only one to experience this. I had never heard of this happening to anyone else. You can imagine my shock when years later, I'm at Target, looking at DVDs when I see a title that caught my eye, Shadow People, and my heart sank when the description of the film sounded exactly like my experience. Redditor54, I was tired and decided to take a nap. It was fairly late for a nap, but I wasn't working at the time and had nothing else better to do. It was almost dark but not quite to sleep. I went until something woke me up and I immediately realized I couldn't move or speak. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, talk, nothing. That's when I saw it, darting from one corner of my bedroom to the other. It was like a dark, evil mass of a shadow. I couldn't quite see any features. I could feel a dark, Evil heaviness, then it darted to the corners behind me where I could not see it at all. I was helpless and terrified. I began to try to yell out for my roommate to help me, but nothing came out. Then I saw it again, and I probably would have shit myself if I wasn't paralyzed. It was no longer floating or darting in the corner. It was slowly raising up at the foot of my bed. Arms reached out, grabbed my feet, began slowly pulling itself up my body towards my head. I could kinda make out facial features, but not really, as it pulled itself closer, up to my knees, then to my waist. The terror and fear I was feeling was unimaginable. I don't know how I did it, probably the fear I was feeling, but I was able to scream out. Luckily my roommate was home and heard me. She opened my door and asked, "Are you okay?" I couldn't answer. It was dark, and so she couldn't see that I was awake, eyes wide open, watching and hearing, but unable to do anything but wave my pinky to her, which she couldn't see either. By this point that thing was sitting on my chest, inches from my face. When she opened my door to see if I was okay, it slowly looked at her and then turned back and looked at me as if it was saying, "I'm not done with you. I'll be back," and it took off into the corner of my bedroom where I first saw it and disappeared. Once it was gone, I was free and able to move. To this day I remember it as if it was yesterday, and so does my roommate. That happened around 2007. At the time I thought I was the only one to experience this. I had never heard of this happening to anyone else. You can imagine my shock when years later, I'm at Target, looking at DVDs, when I see a title that caught my eye, Shadow People, and my heart sank when the description of the film sounded exactly like my experience. I was even more shocked to find out this has happened to thousands of others. I've moved out from where it happened but recently moved back in, same bedroom too. So far it hasn't come back. I hope it never comes back. Redditor 55, went on a class trip when I was in grade 6 or so to an Aboriginal site. We were exploring a house when I noticed this hallway with a glass antique doll sitting on a chair at the end of it, facing me. It was interesting, so I stared at it for a few seconds before leaving. That night, I had a dream of many glass antique dolls breaking into my house from the walls and chasing me until I was surrounded, and then woke up. Redditor 56, I had a sleepover with my friend when I was like 8 years old, maybe younger. It was at my friend's house on a Saturday, and I don't remember everything, but we mainly just played in her room all day. We decided to play hide and seek. But we decided that we would only play it upstairs to create less hiding spaces so the game would be more difficult. It was my turn to seek, and I was looking in every room upstairs: her guest bedroom, parents' bedroom, little sister's bedroom, and the bathroom. So I went back to her room and searched under her bed. Under the bed I found a knife. Like a sharp kitchen knife. And it really freaked me out. Obviously, how would you react if you found a knife in someone's bedroom? Smiley face. It confused me because as soon as she picked me up from my house, we went to her house, went upstairs, and we played. And we had been upstairs the entire time. She had either placed it there before she picked me up, or did it whilst I was there. It isn't a scary story when I think about it now, years later, because she probably put it there to scare me. But at the time it terrified me. Crying face, crying face. Redditor 57, not creepy. More sad. I had a schoolboy crush on my grade school teacher on the 60s. I was like 6 or 7. She had olive skin tone, dark eyes and hair, very pretty. I had dreams where I was sitting about 50 yards from a pond of some size on a hill that sloped upwards from the water. It was rural setting and there were no other people or structures in sight. The day was sunny and summer-like. And she was standing in front of me wearing a nightgown, and her hair and makeup were in place, and she was wearing her glasses just like in school. She smiled and then began to lightly run down the path to the water. There the dream always ended. Halfway through the school year she suddenly stopped coming to school. No explanation given by the school as I recall, and we had a substitute teacher the rest of the year. That summer early on I had spent Sat night at a friend's house, and Sun AM we were in their den at their house, and my friend and I were going through the Baltimore Sun sports section. This was in '65. As his dad read through the rest of the paper, he looked up and said, "Boys, I have some bad news. Miss Teacher's name died." He must have read this in the obits. Years later I heard she had cancer. She was such a nurturing and warm person. Premonition? Did she know she was seriously ill when she was still teaching? Was she saying goodbye? Redditor 58. A few years ago I was walking with some friends to a garage to pick up more alcohol for a birthday party. We were walking along a usually pretty busy main road, but it was really late, midweek, and just dead. On the way back I just had this feeling of being followed, you know when you keep paranoid turning around. I kept hearing footsteps and the bushes on the side of the road kept moving. My friend heard the same, and then this guy just steps out of the bushes behind us with a full-on meat cleaver in his hands. I genuinely thought we're screwed. My heart has never raced so fast. He was waving this huge cleaver in our faces and asking if we'd robbing houses and getting more and more irate. We said no, and then he just calmly started telling us about how his ex-wife's house was burgled and just walked away. It was the weirdest thing, and we have never run so fast home. Redditor 59. Both of these happened when I was going to school in Buffalo, originally from Detroit. One first year, I subscribed for 3 different magazines from a subscription service. First one to arrive was UFO magazine. WTF is this? I wrote an indignant letter to the subscription service, but they replied that they knew nothing about a publication called UFO magazine. I did start receiving the ones I had signed up for, but I also continued to receive that stupid UFO thing, and it was stupid, like a seminar in paranoia and logical fallacies. I figured the subscription service had messed up somehow, and read the dumb thing for laughs monthly. After the first year, I moved, and it took about 6-8 weeks for my magazines to get sorted out. Except for UFO. Only in the new place a week, and here is the latest pile of crap. After 2 years, it finally stopped. Maybe a friend did it as a joke, but no one even hinted around about magazines I received. So, I am in Buffalo, and my family is back in Detroit. One night about 2 a.m., the phone rings, and this woman says, "Collect call from my father's name. Will you accept charges?" I was still half asleep, and I said, "This is my name. Why is my father calling me collect?" The woman repeated my father's name, and then disconnected. Now, my last name is slightly unusual. Most of the time when I run into someone with my last name, I am related to them. Also, my phone number was not in a phone book, had just moved in, plus it was listed under my roommate's name. I called my father the next day, and he had not made any call during the night. This was years before caller ID, so no way to see the number who called. Never did understand that one at all. Redditor 60. First thing was already 8-9 years ago. I hit a man on my bike, but when I turned around there was no man, and no way to escape somewhere. It scared me really bad and almost fell with my bike. Second thing was at my new house maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I saw a woman in a wheelchair got run over by a car. The car drove away and no woman and no wheelchair to be seen. Third, maybe 2 years ago, out of nowhere I had the feeling there was kid in my room. I was so scared, didn't want to leave my bed, not even to close my curtains or close my door. I didn't want to turn off the lights too. Fourth thing is few months ago, I found a box with old pictures, and one picture was my aunt who passed away in 2011. I never seen her since. That whole night I had the feeling a woman was in my room, my aunt. Redditor 61. Been followed in Walmart several times by 40-50-year-old men. I'm 13, first time was when I was 9. I've also saved my little sister from guys like that too multiple times. Redditor 62. Pretty short story, but in grade 9 or 10 I went on a paid school trip to Gettysburg on our way to Washington, D.C. This was a big deal for us since we were from Ontario. In the afternoon we did a late night tour explaining who died where and the horrors of Gettysburg. It was no big deal until my friend was taking photos during the tour and decided to take a photo of one of the buildings where many people had died. In the window there was a somewhat clear silhouette of a person behind some drapes covering the window. What was especially creepy was that it only appeared in the photo and nothing could be seen when we looked afterwards. We even showed the tour guide and they said they have never seen anything like that before. I believe my friend still has the photo. Redditor 63. I don't speak English, so sorry for bad English. I was 13 and am still 13. My 2 friends were also 13, but youngest friend was 9 or 10. So it happened on vacations this year. I was riding a bike with my friend and we were trying a cool place to stay for some time and talk. Sometime later we found some cool looking house that wasn't probably owned. At least we thought. We sat at the back of the house because it was hella cool, but we didn't want to go inside. THW weird thing about the house was that it was very demolished. A lot of people were here before us. We were sitting there quite some time and then someone drove up to us. It wasn't a cop. We got scared, so we tried to get on our bikes, but he blocked us, almost driving Mo over. Then that fat ass started screaming at us and grabbed my 13 years old friend ear that was closest to him. It was very painful to him. Then he started slurring at us, telling us that he will beat us and call the police. So we tried to prow him that we didn't do a thing. At the moment, 9-year-old friend started crying. We started showing a lot of empty bottles of beer, and he angrily said, "I don't know, I could come here," and even beat my meat. But everyone was stunned. We hear him scream from upstairs, "Why the duck, the wall fallen." Yep. We all go there and say that someone before us pushed wall too hard and it fault. At this moment guy was all red. He told the youngest to go get his father. He came back but with father of my friend and he was strong AF. He angrily walked a man and asked, "Did you hurt my son?" Then the dad said, "Kids, go back home," so we did. We came to our friend house because it was the closest house and we already did sleep over there. As the dad came back, he was kinda fine. And then me and my friend came to my house on sleepover. We still remember this story, and after that we still think it was scary AF, but it was big dose of adrenaline. Redditor 64, okay, so I like to get up and go downstairs in the middle of the night and get a snack before I fall asleep. So when you go down the stairs, there is a hallway leading to the dining room kitchen, and there is a pretty big window in the room that was facing the backyard. So one night I walked downstairs and was in the hallway and looked up and saw a man looked like he was homeless in my backyard, face pressed up against the glass. He looked like he was staring at me. I felt like I was going to pass out in shock. I quickly ran up to my parents' room and told my dad. He then got out his gun, but he was gone. I think he was trying to break into my house. BTW, I was around 11 when this happened. Redditor 65, I had the same feeling happening to me twice. I was 13 at the time. We had 2 dogs who always slept in our hallway almost next to me in my sister's room. One night I just woke up. I didn't know why. Keep in mind, me and my sister slept in bunk beds. I was at the top, she was in the bottom. I had these safety rails on my side so I wouldn't fall off while sleeping. I had this weird feeling that I'm being watched. I looked through my safety rail and saw a big shadow figure hovering over my bed, just looking at me. I didn't know what to do, so I pretended to be asleep so it would go away. It didn't, it just stayed there watching me. Next thing I knew, I woke up in the morning like nothing had happened. Second one was when I was 14, my grandmother had sadly passed away due to a condition. We moved some of her stuff to our house. This one night when we got all of the things in right places, I went to bed. This time I had my own bed, what was under a window, and the window had this curtain which you pull down to keep light coming in the morning. And I wanted to pull it down, and I did. Same time I get the same feeling from the night. That I was being watched. I looked to the window which reflects so I can see behind through the window, and I saw a little girl in a white dress standing there. I quickly looked behind me into the hallway and there was nothing. Next morning I told my mom ABT the girl, and what say replied to me shocked me the most. Apparently there was this little girl from my grandmother's time when she was young, who killed herself by jumping off a balcony. Never slept the same again. Redditor 66, I only really told my parents this, but this happened a few weeks back. It was around 11 at night and I was with 2 of my siblings. My older sister asked me to take out the trash, so I opened that back door, and I swear on everything that I saw a skinwalker type creature run from the back of my dad's truck. And it's not the only time something creepy happens in my backyard. Redditor 67, third one, let's go. Okay, so my final submission is actually more hopeful than scary to me, but might creep people out. So recently my Aunt Sylvia passed away in a fatal car accident, and obviously we were all devastated. The morning of the funeral, it would be taking place in the afternoon. We were watching TV while eating breakfast. I remember the movie we were watching was Bruce Almighty, and we got on the subject of another aunt named Monica, Sylvia's sister. At the time we were getting rides from her to and from school. Out of all of my control, I asked my parents, is Auntie Sylvia picking us up tomorrow? Total subconscious mistake. I didn't think much of it until I saw my parents' faces. I quickly apologized because I didn't realize I had said her name. Sorry, I don't know why I said Auntie Sylvia. As I said Sylvia, I looked toward the TV and it was suddenly turned to static. Everyone fell silent. It was either the biggest coincidence I've ever experienced or Sylvia straight up wanted to scare us. But then that was her personality, so I like to imagine she played a little joke on us like she used to. After breakfast I went to my room and I looked up and said, "That wasn't funny, dude," while laughing.
Redditor 68. When I was 8 years old, I remember that we lived out in the middle of the country in old trailer park.
I was outside playing in the mud. My parents was talking about going to town. I turned my head to look at the woods that was across the dirt road. I saw a light brown animal paw walking straight left to abandoned trailer house that was across the road to me. I tried to ask my parents if they saw it to be. They said it was my imagination. It's been 16 years later. I still can't explain. I'm not sure if it was real or my head got that good to imagine that. Redditor 69. Once when I was like 9 years old, I had arranged my room so I had a TV mounted to the wall next to the door. My bed was facing a window and it was a loft bed, so I can't really see out the windows because my bed was high up. So one night I turn my TV on and I'm climbing the ladder to my bed when I see something weird in a window. It looked like a light. I look out a window and see that the motion light my dad installed turned on. It was in the yard, meant for the dogs to be able to see at night. The thing is, it was winter and we had let our dogs in. My dog was also staring out the window, hackles up, rabid dog mode. She was ready to kill. I looked out and got scared. I still don't know what had turned that light on, but my dog did not approve. Redditor 70. I was home alone, probably 6-7 years ago, and decided to take a bath. I heard the dogs barking and getting fussy. Suddenly I hear my grandpa's voice and though, "Okay, cool, he's home." I get out and dress to go check on him. No one was there and the dogs were asleep on the couch. I searched the whole house only to realize I was home alone. I ran outside in the rain and called a friend to come pick me up. Ended up spending the day with her. Scary shit. Redditor 71. I saw this dead dude near a bathroom in Ohio. I thought he was dead with how stiff he was, but as I got closer he woke up like a zombie, still all dead looking. Quickly ran into the bathroom. Redditor 72. One summer as a teen, I decided to start going to my neighborhood pool at night by myself on weekends if it was warm enough. I lived in a safe area, so for the most part it was perfectly safe, just had to watch for traffic, since parents would be driving kids home. Typically after leaving, I'd take the long way home so I could vibe to music. It was later than usual one night when I left. Maybe around 10:30? Since everything closed down at 10 where I lived, it was perfectly quiet out. I was biking past an abandoned office building, when I see a car without headlights pull into the parking lot. 3 people run out of it towards a broken window near the ground level, but stop and look at me for a second before going through the window. I turned off my music and biked back to my house at Mach 12. I never biked past there at night ever again. Redditor 73. My school has a large forest surrounding it and my year group had a school sleepover, and at 9 p.m. most of the kids went on a glow stick hunt in the forest around our base. It was me, a boy, and the art teacher. It was pitch black. We were sitting around a fire and one of the boys said something very creepy. He said, "Does anyone want any soup?" I said, "Yeah, sure," and he got 3 bowls of soup for 2 people. He looks just to the side of me and pours the third one back in the main pot. I looked to the behind me and there were sticks snapping as some sort of creature ran into the forest. Everyone came back 10 minutes later. We told no one. And me and the boy have kept it a secret for 3 years. Redditor 74. Not really a specific story, just lots of sexual harassment when I was a kid. I'm a very large guy, always have been, who matured pretty quickly. So since I was about 11 I've had people much older than me make comments, flirt, and occasionally grope because I was about 6, decent looking and looked way older than I was. Redditor 75. This is my sister's story. One night she was leaving a house party and had to walk up a hill a little ways to her car. She happened to notice a person across the street, in a hoodie, facing her, staring straight at her. She couldn't make out if it was male or female. But as she walked, the hooded person, still facing her, moved with her as if it was floating. She ran to her car, jumped in and drove home as fast she could. Never saw it again. Redditor 76. About 2 weeks ago, my girlfriend and I saw an odd orange-yellow light hovering in the sky. I pointed it out and she saw the same thing. We even discussed it possibly being a UFO. She believes in it more than I do. It disappeared after about a minute. Redditor 77, this isn't like paranormal creepy, but real life creepy, and I honestly forget this happened to me all the time. I think it's a trauma response. So in fall of 2017 I went to college at Westfield State University in Westfield, MA. I hated it and would go home every single weekend. I'm from the Boston area, so it's 2 hours away. I was a freshman and freshmen couldn't have cars on campus, so to get home I'd have to Uber 25 minutes from Westfield to the bus station in Springfield, then take the bus from Springfield to Boston, and vice versa for when he'd come back to school. I would always come back on Sunday nights, and get to Springfield around like 10 so that I could spend the day at home. It was a very set routine every weekend. So I get back, call my Uber. He comes and we start our 25-minute ride back to Westfield. I never really pay attention in Ubers, I'm just kinda on my phone, but I'll occasionally check the app to see my ETA. So I check and I noticed it added 10 minutes to the ETA. I think it's a bit strange since it's always routinely a 25 minutes ride, but I don't think much of it, maybe Teresa car accident causing traffic, etc. So I go back to scrolling on my phone, then check the app again. Now I notice it added another 10 minutes, bringing the total to an extra 20 minutes. That's when I'm like, okay Teresa, no way, it's a 45 minutes ride back. So I say to him, you know I'm going to Westfield State, right? And he instantly nervously laughs and goes, yeah, I missed the exit and have been trying to think of how to tell you, cause him nervous. WTF? That's when I text my boyfriend at the time, panicking like WTF is going on. He tells me to check my ETA now, so I go to the app, and see that the Uber ended the ride. So 1, now I can't see where I'm going, and 2, Uber thinks I made it at my destination. I freak TF out and ask him why he did that. He gets nervous again and goes, so it doesn't charge you more. I look out the window and to see if I can see any signs as to where I am. I see an exit sign for Lee, Ma. I've never heard of that town, and all the towns around Westfield. So I go on Google Maps and Lee Ma is near the fucking New York border and is 40 minutes away from Westfield. Like there is no way we ended up there from missing an exit. I am literally panicking so bad, so that's when I call my BF and stay on the phone WM. I'm literally talking in code, I'm so nervous. My BF would say, do you know where you are, and it answer like no, Ike about that. After staying on the phone for a while he finally turns around and heads back to Westfield. I stay on the phone the entire ride back and ran to my dorm. Weirdly, I only told a few PPL this, and like I said I forget all the time that this happened. I still take Ubers too. I really believe the guy was trying to kidnap me and take me to New York, cause Therese just no fucking way it was all a mistake. Redditor 78, I woke up in the middle of the night one day and went downstairs. I don't remember why, but I do remember passing by me basement and unfinished creepy and heard like a moan or gasp. It was strange, but I ran into my bathroom crying, locked the door with my back to it, cried for like an hour or two, feel asleep, woke up to my parents knocking on the door, didn't tell them what happened. Redditor 79, one night I dreamt that I was playing a video game and I saw some eyes staring at me in darkness. Redditor 80, when I was 15 I saw a jinn one time, but I never told anyone about it.